This is the Washington Times front page for Thursday, September 22nd, 2022. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. At the United Nations, President Biden led a parade of Western leaders denouncing Russia for its outrageous invasion of Ukraine. Joseph Clark reports Biden argued that Russian President Vladimir Putin's threats to escalate a brutal, needless war are signs of weakness, not strength, as his troops suffer major losses on the battlefield. Hours earlier, Putin announced in a brief but belligerent national address the mobilization of 300,000 military reservists as the Kremlin attempts to turn the tide after a series of tactical embarrassments in Ukraine. Then Wolfgang reports Putin vowed that his veiled talk of a nuclear strike is not a bluff as he cast Ukraine, the U.S., and much of Europe as enemies of Russia. Within hours of the speech, major protests broke out across Russia and hundreds were arrested, according to media reports. Russian defense officials reportedly barred airlines from selling tickets to draft-age men because of fears that scores may flee the country rather than go to war in Ukraine. It's the latest sign of desperation from the Russian leader, who has seen Ukraine rebuke his troops and retake ground in the south and east. Putin is not attending the UN General Assembly meetings in New York. The Federal Reserve again raised its benchmark interest rate by 0.75 percentage point, forecasting more than 1 million lost jobs by next year and a deeper economic slowdown. It was the third straight 0.75 point hike by the Fed, Dave Boyer reports, moving its benchmark interest rate to a range of 3% to 3.25%, the highest level since 2008. It's the first time the Fed has raised rates by 0.75 point 3 consecutive times since at least 1991. The Fed took the latest action after inflation in August ticked up to 8.3%, near a 40-year high, despite gasoline prices dropping from record highs this summer. Inflation peaked in June at 9.1%. Fed Chairman Jay Powell also signaled that more significant rate hikes are likely, with the rate reaching 4.4% by the end of the year. You can read all of these stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page. You can also find the entire lineup of Washington Times news, commentary, and sports podcasts at WashingtonTimes.com/podcasts. Ohio Democratic Senate nominee Tim Ryan has been pounding home the idea that he is more conservative than his record in Congress. Seth MacLaughlin reports Ryan is playing up his agreements with former President Trump on trade with China, on the military, and on the Space Force in his campaign against Republican nominee J.D. Vance. 3 weeks out from the start of early voting, Ryan is considered within striking distance of flipping a seat once considered reliably Republican. It has sparked debate over whether Democrats could lean on style over substance in other battleground states. And finally, what's the key to reversing the trend of declining faith? Mark Kellner talked with leading pastors and scholars who say it will require greater engagement with Scripture, more attention to discipleship, and a commitment to attend church in person. Many evangelicals' theology is making a shift while Christianity is losing its position as the majority faith in the United States. A recent Pew Research Center study predicted that as many as 52% of Americans could identify as non-religious by 2070. Find all of today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and find us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Washington Times in any major podcast app. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.